shirt on that says "Be Love." So the book is about little Amora. Of course, amour in French means love. And we searched out something that could be the name of the girl because she didn't have a name when we first started the book. So we named her Amora. And Amora is taking her friends on a journey to learn how to be loved, to open their hearts, their minds, to learn how to speak with love and to act with love. And that's how it all, started. And there's a young lady who's a children's book author that we brought on board to help to write the book. She and I worked jointly together with the illustrator. And then we published the book last year, but we started 2 years ago. So that's how we got to the book. And it talks about the beloved, how love creates the beloved community. And we're in the process of releasing a curriculum connected to it. It should be available, I think, by the fall of the first of next year.
And I appreciate you mentioning that. So one of the things the Minnesota Humanities Center would love to work with the King Center on is to get more of the books within schools. There's many school leaders here in the audience that love hearing that. So we'll follow up on that. The question of cultivating the beloved community. What are some of the things, again, I appreciate the conversation we've been having, not just on this stage, but the time you've been here. What are some of the things that we all could be doing to cultivate the beloved community mindset?
So I'm going to use 3 words. But one of them I've been talking about heavily, language. Leadership that we alluded to. When I speak of leadership, and I'm going to come back to each one of them. When I speak of leadership, I'm saying not waiting on somebody else. Starts with me taking personal responsibility. The other one is leaning in or learning. My father said in his book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos of Community, that was published in 1967 in his World House chapter, where he talked about the world house that we live in with all of our different cultures and language, and how we live in this world where we have all this diversity, and how technology and science has connected us, and how we must create a world where we learn how to live together as brothers and sisters, or together we will be forced to perish as fools. And so when you think about that learning, which I call leaning in, with the intentionality of seeking to understand past your own set of beliefs and past your own values, it doesn't mean that you're going to lose your values. It means that you're going to gain a greater understanding of where other people come from and how they arrived at whatever mindset they have. And some have some wacky mindsets. Let's just be real. But you might have a little bit in you too. Let's be real about that as well. So I often tell this leaning in story from a story that I heard. It was very powerful for me. There's a young lady who's a Black artist, hip hop artist down in Mississippi. She launched a campaign towards removing the state flag from her state. And when she launched that campaign on social media, she started receiving a lot of threats, as you can imagine, in Mississippi. And there was a gentleman, a white gentleman, who happened to know her, had known her for 25 years. And he reached out, basically said, I don't agree with what you're doing, but I'm concerned about your well-being. She in turn invited him to come meet with her at her home in the backyard. And they had a conversation. So he leaned in, she leaned in. And the first thing she asked him was not why you support that flag, and do you understand how it affects people that look like me? She said, tell me what that flag means to you. When people feel, believe, think different than we are, we dismiss them immediately. They're just off. That's not right. But it doesn't get you anywhere, because just because you feel that way towards that person, there are gonna be more of those people. They keep coming, period, all the way around. If you're on the right side, left side keep coming, left side, the right side keep coming. So we gotta figure this out. We gotta learn. We gotta try to understand where people are coming from, even if we don't agree with them. Why is that? Because as she asked that question, she penetrated him. And he wanted to know, well, what does it mean to you? That's that curiosity you're talking about. No judgment, just trying to understand. And that's hard, because if you got strong feelings about something and people are totally different in their thinking, it's hard to not shut down and not want to hear anymore. So I get it. But again, it's just one of these things I'm trying to get people to understand. Our differences ain't going nowhere. I mean, let's just accept that. We are going to be different. We're not going to all think alike. We're not going to all like each other. But we got to learn how to love each other. And we got to learn how to coexist with all of these differences and try to find a way. And it's hard work. It's not expedient. You got to talk it through. You might have to come back 2 and 3 and 4 and 10 and 20 more and 100 times. You keep working at it. They sat there, had a conversation back and forth. And something started happening to him. He started caring more about her than the flag. But guess what? He went home, still had a flag in his front yard. He didn't do anything. But within a year, he took it down, connected with her, and joined her in the campaign. Now, just long story short, because it's a true story, and I'm not saying they're the only, but long story short, Mississippi now has a new flag as of last year. It's possible for us to create a different world and a different climate, but you have to have the curiosity and the courage and the conscientiousness to do that and lean into people that are different than you and stop just trying to circle yourself with the choir. And sometimes you have to get to a place where I respectfully disagree, but I still love you. And there's more to you than that. My cousin and I are very different politically. She voted for President Trump. Black. Martin Luther King Jr.'s brother's oldest daughter. Can you imagine that most households, people broke up because their loved one voted for President Trump? And I'm giving him honor because he was president, whether we like it or not. Some people are, that man, that orange man, no. I'm going to give him the dignity of being a person. It is not my responsibility to strip him of his personhood. My responsibility is to send out love and to speak truth in love too. So he is a person no matter what he's done and harmed and anything else. I don't excuse that. but I'm not going to allow myself to strip a person of their personhood. They do that very well. I don't have to do it. But I wasn't going to not connect with my cousin because she voted for Trump. She's my cousin. I love her. There's more to her than just voting for Trump and whatever other stuff, you know, she supports. We disagree on a lot of things, but there's some things we connect on. And that's where we connect. She knows where I stand on things. I know where she stands on things. Maybe one day, you know, every now and then we'll delve into the subject for me to plant some more seeds. She might do the same thing, but I'm not going to give up on her. She's a part of my literal biological family and a part of my human family. So that's the kind of leaning that I'm talking about. And that's hard because I'm looking at the room like now, because y'all looking at me like, what? But I am my daughter's child. And I'm speaking of Martin Luther King and the King of Kings, because that's what God did with us. He leaned in. He leaned into your stuff. Because all of us ain't all of that. We project certain things publicly, but all of us got something behind the scenes. Let's just be honest. That if people knew all of you, they would do this. So thank God, God leaned into you. So if I am supposed to be a follower personally, and this is just my faith, then I can't be a hypocrite like that. So I got to lean in and I got to go through the process, just like he goes through the process with us. So that's the first thing. That's how you cultivate this mindset of honoring the dignity of all human beings, regardless of whether they're acting dignified or not. Regardless of whether they believe what we believe or not. Because it's dismissing people, canceling people. That's why every time something happens in society, I'm not quick to jump on the fire bandwagon. Get rid of them. Because guess what? What does that accomplish? I want you to logically think about that. Sometimes if it's harm and damage and the person is in a place where they can't and shouldn't be able to continue, you have to remove them for safety reasons and otherwise, because you don't want people to keep harming people. But there's some situations where we're just hollering it out every time, when we can put provisions into place to give people growth and transformation plans and put other consequences in place, whether it's cutting pay or other stuff, because guess what? You just move them around on the board. They left you as a problem, but you just sent them out as a problem to another entity. They're just gonna go do it somewhere else. So at what point do we have accountability? So we gotta think about that as leaders, that it's not always cut, push out. Sometimes we gotta put some correction plans in place that has some consequences with it, because we're being irresponsible by releasing them to our other brothers and sisters to deal with the same exact problem. So we ain't solved nothing. So I'm a solutionist, and I think of things from that perspective. Second, I talked about language a lot, so I won't dwell on that because I know we don't have a lot of time. I talked about language. Language is so important. My father said in the same book, Where Do We Go From Here? Please get the book. It's a blueprint for our world. You would think he was here with us right now. He was having a conversation with Stokely Carmichael and talking about Black power. And he was challenging him because Stokely said, no, they need to understand Black power. We need Black power. And my father was trying to explain to him, there's another way and way to word this to get to the same outcome, because you don't hear Jewish people saying Jewish power, but they have power. That's what he said in his book. He said, leaders have to be concerned about semantics. Say that again. Leaders have to be concerned about semantics. Words have denotative, that means the definition of a word. You can look it up and find out all the different definitions, but they have connotative meanings, things that have been ascribed to them, you know, things that people start conjuring up related to a word that when they hear it, like defund the police. You know what people hear when they hear defund the police? They hear basically that you don't want zero police. So they shut down because in a world where there's violence and crime in places, there are people that care about having at least some form of public safety that addresses that. So language is very important. Maybe it's reimagine public safety. But defund is going to shut people down because of the connotative meaning of that and the denotative. Okay, I lost some people on that too. I'm not here for votes. That's why I'm not an elected official. I'm not trying to get no
We're
votes.
with you. We're with you.
And approves. As long as he approves, that's all good to me. You know, and then finally taking personal responsibility. When you leave here, I want you to do a thought, emotion, and behavioral assessment, audit in your life. I want you to think about what you think about. I want you to think about your emotions and how you are responding and reacting to things emotionally. Because we got to audit those things. We're moving through our life so swiftly, and we're not taking time to really think about what is our thoughts right now concerning this? What is our emotion around it? What was my action and behavior today? More importantly, start thinking about the fact that the world is bigger than you. It's bigger than me and my Black family. It's bigger than me and my white family. It's bigger than me and my Christian family. We live in a world of diverse people. And think about, as we stand up for issues, is there anything within our thinking? Is there anything within our emotional base? Is there anything in our action that is contributing or perpetuating the injustice itself? Because if there's certain things that we want to see changed in the world, it starts with us taking responsibility in our own lives and saying, what do I need to shift and adjust? I may want something for me, but it's what I want for me for the good of all. It's not just about me. I want to make sure that what I want is also going to be healthy and equitable and fair for other people too. We got to think through these things, and we don't do that enough. So how am I contributing to what may be problematic in society? And how do I need to expand so that I can think about how this will affect everybody else in the end? And you have to be honest about that. We got to stop being so self-centered, and we got to become other-centered. Because as you become other-centered, you obviously are going to be a part of that. And I tell people all the time, I'm finished with this. I've gone into corporations and made a few people a little, to look at me a little bit cross-eyed and wonder, where is this sister coming from? And she's just letting white people get away with everything. I'm like, no. I'm just being strategic. So in the world of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because when we talk about a beloved community, it includes everybody, even your adversaries. So in the world of diversity, equity, inclusion, when we're talking sometimes, we talk in ways, I'm not saying everybody, but there are those that talk in ways where if I were a white male, I would be scared too. Because we can't create an inclusive environment or create a new environment that's inclusive and exclude them just because we feel like they are only benefiting. We got to figure out how everybody comes along in the equation and balance the equation so that they feel like we're not trying to get rid of you. We're just trying to make sure that across the board, this is fair. This is equitable. So at the board level, for instance, where the best place things can change because you don't have to worry about the labor laws at the same level. I have 12 board members. I need to put some more Black people on this board. And I'm gonna speak about us because in every category, we're still the last. We're still the left. And I'm concerned we're becoming close to becoming an endangered group of people. So at the board level, let's amend our bylaws. We're gonna add 4 Black members. Just that quick. Period. That doesn't say you as a white male, go. But over time, what's going to happen is they're going to feel like, okay, I can make space and room for this. So we got to start being a little more expansive and creative in our thinking as we go forward, and be careful of our language as well, and make sure we try to understand so that we can develop a plan of action to lead to a better outcome for everybody. And it's not easy. It's long-term work, but work on you in the process.
Let's do this at this time. See if there's any questions from the audience, and I'll have Jamal come up. Is Jamal here? Oh, you have the mic there. Perfect.
Dr. King, thanks for joining us. I feel connected to you. I last saw you at the Phillips Auditorium at Lincoln School pre-COVID. And my grandfather, Norman Jemison, was a good friend of your grandfather, Mr. Opie. I still own that farm in Heiberger. So every time I live in Minneapolis, every time you come, I enjoy coming to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think there's a question over here.
Hi, Burger. That big.
As she makes her way over, we were graced to have Dr. Cornell West, and I would be remiss not to say he started talking about how Clarence Thomas reminded him of his grandfather, and then proceeded to say, well, he might have a difference of opinion politically, but he had to love him.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you reinforcing that today.
Cornell West for president.
Hello, Dr. King. Welcome, Mr. Lindsay. I live in a small town about an hour and a half south of here, and we have diversity, but it's very small and it's growing. So my partner and I gathered together, and we have a nonprofit that we just organized. And it is so hard to pull people that look like me together to do stuff. And that's the most disappointing thing that I'm facing right now, is the lack of support, you know. And what is your words of encouragement to help me not to give up the battle? And B, what can I do to galvanize people? I want to see things change in my city. I've lived there over 35 years, and I've seen a lot of things change, a lot of things remain the same. And that's what motivated me to start the organization, so that we can make changes. But it's disappointing, the lack of support from people that look like me to try and change things for us. So what can I do not to be disappointed? And what can I do more to galvanize people in the loving way,
So,
like you mentioned?
So what is it that I'm gonna ask you some questions.
Yes, ma'am.
What is it
Yes,
that
ma'am.
you want to change?
Lack of businesses in our town. What can we do to come together to get more businesses for people like me? We don't have a church. We don't have an African-American church. Not that there's a white section or black church section or whatever, but there's no gospel church there. We don't have hairdressers. When we come to get our hair done, we have to drive here to Minneapolis. Am I telling the truth, honey? Bucata knows. And there are so many things that we are lacking, just fundamental things. There are organizations that say they are for diversity, and it's good to have it on their platform. But in my eyes, it's a form of revenue for certain people because they don't really try and change what's going on there. So, but I really want to change things.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. Are you aligned with other organizations?
Yes, ma'am. That's how I ended up here. We are in line with the Minneapolis Humanities Society, the American Lung Association, different aside right now, because we are new. This is just our first year.
Okay. Well, give yourself a break. Your first year. You're
Yes,
trying to
ma'am.
come out the gate,
Yes, ma'am.
you know, with the trophy. That don't work like that.
Okay.
My mother says struggle is a never ending process. Freedom is never really won. You earn it and win it in every generation. So
Say that
you're at the
again. Say that
beginning.
again, Dr. King. Say that again.
Struggle is a never ending process. Freedom is never really won. You earn it and win it in every generation. And so you're first on the right track by connecting, you know, with,
Mr. Lindsay.
say it again,
Okay.
center.
Yeah, Minnesota Humanities Center.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
that's the first thing. I want you to envision 1, 2, 3, what you want to see happen. Okay?
Okay.
And what is needed for that to happen. Because if you don't have the strategy and plan to know what is needed to happen, you're not going to know who to connect with. Stop worrying about who won't join you.
Okay.
You will exhaust yourself. Wear yourself down and you will give up. Go with who will go with you. Sometimes you have to open the door for people to really open their eyes and realize I need to join forces. So you may have to prove something first to people before they connect to you. So find the right places of connection and think about what resources you need so you can connect to the other resources, because there are resources out there that you can bring into your community for those businesses to be started. Because once you do that and give these opportunities to people that are in that particular community that look like you, then they will then become advocates and walk side by side to keep opening the door for others. So that's what I would suggest that you do to keep hope alive. But please be realistic. You're just starting and you're on a good path by making those connections. But again, think about, you know, the plan and what you all think is needed to get some of those things accomplished, and look around and see what exists out there. Sometimes we try to reinvent a wheel and we just got to find out where the resources are and connect with that and become a conduit for it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
There's a question in the middle, Dante.
Hey, Dr. King, it's so good to be with you and all the community here. I had a chance to go to Montgomery, Alabama, at the Lynching Memorial and the Legacy Museum with Brian Stevenson. And it's a surreal experience. And you've been talking today about doing your own work. And one of my favorite quotes by Brian Stevenson is hopelessness is the enemy of justice. And so I'm curious, like, what gives you hope and how do we maintain our hope? With all the tragedies that are happening, I hear so many people talk about, like, I done just lost hope. We're cynical. Why we're still here, why we're still doing this, why we still having these conversations. And you talked about kind of the semantics and the rhetoric of hopelessness. What gives you hope and how do we remain hopeful that we're going to actually be able to be loved and get to this beloved community? Thanks.
Thank you. So, you know, for me, it took me a minute to get to this. And it's really, I won't say it's simple, but it's really eye-opening, and it's strengthening day by day. And it's just this. One, I look at what my ancestors overcame. And this is for everybody, because we all have ancestors globally. We are in a humanity that has faced some dark stuff. And that humanity has overcome in those previous generations. There's always a bright light. There's always a contingency of people who are fighting in the light, with light, and I come from them. So it's in me. So I'm hopeful because I know I'm a part of that. So I don't care how bad it gets. This thing here, that's not going to remain forever, because there's going to be enough of us and a force of us to continue to fight. And some of this is going to be broken at some point. So that's why I just don't give up. And I come from people that I know that happened with. And more importantly, I remember something my mother said to me. She said, baby, the darkest hour is always before the dawn. She was saying to me, yes, it's dark, but there will be a dawn someday and you have to keep working. And she talked to me about how when they got in Montgomery and finally the officials filed an injunction against the whole carpool. The carpool was essential to keep the bus boycott going. If they could not do that carpool, they were practically done. And so she said, that was our darkest hour, and Martin didn't know what to do. Our backs were against the wall, and they were in court. And during the break from the trial, a reporter came in the courtroom, and there was a lot of commotion in that courtroom, and people didn't know what it was. But this reporter came down to where my father was at the defendant's table and gave the report that the Supreme Court had just ruled that bus segregation is unconstitutional. Why do I say that? When we say the universe is on the side of justice, you have to keep the pedal pushed, knowing that at some point there's going to be a divine intervention in the work that you're doing. If you don't have faith in this generation, you will continue to lose. Faith is essential to struggle. That's why this generation has to get connected, not to a church, but to a God who is always going to ensure that his humanity is perpetuated. He is not going to let all this defeat just overtake us, because it's not just about the defeat. As I said earlier, the things that God is putting in us and the things that God is getting out of us. Some of us got so much hate and anger. Some things are happening to shake some stuff out of us. Some things are happening to wake some things up in us, because sometimes we slumber and we sleep and we get comfortable. And so we got to put some fire on. You know what I'm saying? And it's unfortunate that lives have to be lost. And I can say it because I lost a father. I lost a grandmother, not during the struggle, but was shot at our church while playing the organ. But sometimes these things, there's things that what may, and I'm sorry to preach like this because you got me stirred now. But what the enemy, what people who have allowed themselves to be used by the enemy are trying to do to destroy humanity, tear us apart, tear us asunder, keep us at odds with one another. The God of the universe is still operating in this universe, and he's going to bring good out of it. He brought good out of what happened to George Floyd. No, we didn't get everything that we should have. But there are things happening. There's things that are emerging. Some things are still in the ground. When you put a seed in the ground, it still has inside of it the ingredients of whatever that seed is. If it's a tree, if it's a certain kind of flower, it goes in a dark space for a period of time. And if you don't continue to water that, if you don't continue to fertilize that area, it won't sprout forth. So that's why we can't stop, because there are things in the ground right now, meaning it's in the dark. It's happening in a room that we don't know about. People are meeting and they're organizing and strategizing and planning, and it's going to come forth. It's going to sprout forth one day. And so don't give up. Don't get weary. As they say, in well doing, because in due season, we will reap if we don't faint now.
Another question right here. Rosemont.
Hello, Dr. King. So the favorite picture of your dad that I like is when he was at the Ghana Independence Day on March 6, 1957, with then Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. So I want to ask you, what do you think about relations between Africans and African Americans? I have lived in Minnesota for about 30 years, right? When I see a Black person, they are my sister, they are my brother. I don't get the reciprocal, right? So what do you think about those relationships for the beloved community? And how do we get there? Because I'm going to continue to love. Like it's one, even when I don't feel the love back, I'm going to continue to pour myself in and love. But is there something you can tell us? Because we need to work this. Because in the final analysis, we are one, right? So
Right.
what do you think about that?
Well, I do know there's a strain. I do know there's a strain. I do know there's a tension between brothers and sisters here and the brothers and sisters from the homeland. And a large part of that is ignorance. It's going back to what I said about leaning in and understanding each other and each other's culture, and also the reciprocation. I think sometimes, you know, I've been in conversations listening to people, and I think there's some people in the Black community that feel that those in from the African continent separate themselves from the Black community, as if something's wrong with the Blacks in America because they don't understand perhaps certain things about the culture of Blacks in America, and perhaps vice versa. And so I think since you feel that way, there are others of you that feel that way. I think there ought to be a campaign for you all to connect and begin the process of educating. We got to understand each other and understand our common causes. My father clearly understood that and stood up for that. And so that's what I would suggest. But it's definitely, you're right, it is definitely a serious problem. You know, but it's interesting. There are a lot of people born on this soil, some of whom descended, and I say it this way, some of whom descended from enslaved people, because every Black person in America did not descend from an enslaved person. We don't talk about that. And every white person did not descend from a slave owner. We don't talk about that, but that's a whole nother discussion. But many are they're going back to Africa, or I'm going to say back, well, you're back. Many are going to Africa. They're finding that connectivity to Ghana and Liberia. Some are moving because they don't feel like this is home anymore. So things are happening, but I think people like you have to stay on the wall and help to continue to cultivate and foster that with those that will come along. Again, I think sometimes we spend a lot of time frustrated about who won't come along. And I think we have to go with those who come along and know that there are some people who have the ability to reach those we cannot reach. So as we are working together, we got to realize who's amongst us and who may be able to do the connectivity that we cannot do.
All right, I think this, you get one more question or make this?
Yeah, I'm not in charge. I don't know about the time, that's on.
Okay, we'll take one more from the audience here. I think I'll have one final question for you. I want to make sure that Ms. Javetta Steele is ready to come up on stage and grace us again with a couple of songs.
Sure.
Okay. Hello, Dr. King. Thank you for being here. My name is Malik Al-Taj. I am a first-generation Sudanese American. My question for you is, how do you see the younger generation connecting with older Black folks about the issues that come with the LGBT community? Because Black trans women are disappearing and dying. And as a queer individual myself, I feel a heavy disconnect trying to explain these issues in a respectful manner to those who have done work before me.
So it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Thank you for your question. It goes back to what I was saying earlier, finding the people in the older generation, because I think that's what you said, the older generation. Finding the people in the older generation who are advocates, who do understand, who can help create a community of people who can help to communicate to other people. None of this stuff is going to change until we recognize we've got to work with those who are willing to work with us in that area. I don't want you to get frustrated. I don't want you to give up. I don't want you to shut down. And so that's why I'm saying this. The reality is there are issues in our society, there are things in our society that are difficult for people to grasp. And we have to do the work of helping people to understand. And part of that work is being able to say, okay, let me find others who can join with me so I can draw strength from them, because you're going to get tired alone. Others, if it's 5, if it's 10, even if it's a few, it doesn't matter, because a few oftentimes make the difference in terms of change and transition. And so I would suggest that whoever those adults are, because it has to be some, there's some, correct? Yeah, that you continue to cultivate that, you continue to share, don't give up sharing. Don't give up, continue to try to enlighten, you know, and ask for what it is that you'd like for them to do next to help you in whatever the quest is that you're trying to do. So that would be my suggestion. Thank you.
This will be the last question for Dr. King for today. So in the audience, there are many sheroes that are out there. There's a couple that I have personally seen and been fortunate to be near. For example, Sharon Nelson, who's bravely fighting and continues to fight to maintain the legacy of her brother Prince. I saw Valerie Castile, there she is, earlier today, yes. Fighting to rid the state of the shame, the stigma of actually forcing children to pay for lunch and calling us out, and just talk about dogged determination. Got that across the finish line this legislative session. So can we have another hand for her for that? And then we are very fortunate to have the First Lady of Civil Rights here from Minnesota, Dr. Josie Johnson. In 2012, Minnesota was polling saying that we would have photo ID and legislation that would be actually more arduous than currently exists in the state of North Carolina. Dr. Johnson joined me and a whole slew of others to talk about and framing it, not just that it would hurt African Americans, but there would be women that would not be able to vote, individuals in the military would not be able to vote if the law. And Minnesota was the only state to defeat an initiative like that in the entire country. So thank you, Dr. Johnson. There are many sheroes. You're one of them, and I'm sure that there's a lot of new sheroes that are going to be looking at you for the powerful words you gave us today. But I'm curious, the sheroes in your life that we all need to know about. Unfortunately, in the state of Minnesota, there's ethnic studies. So there's a lot of social studies teachers who need to be taking notes, because we should be developing that curriculum.
First of all, let me honor these sheroes today, and I'm glad to be in your presence. You know, if the truth be told, most of what happens in the world, and I'm not being biased in this, is because of women.
Let
the
church say amen.
I'm talking about most of the good. I'm talking about most of the good. No offense, my brothers, but most of the good. Even if you were the one out front, it was the one that was in the home. It was the one that was your sister. It was the one that was your friend, that really gave you the strength and the inspiration to be either the voice or the face And so I want to say that at the outset, because the number one in my life is my mom. And, you know, I always say to people that when my father was assassinated, he was one of the most hated persons in the United States of America. And now he's one of the most loved persons in the world. And I've had people to say, well, that's because he's dead and he can't, you know, intimidate people anymore and all that kind of stuff. I said, you know, you have a point there, but the reality too is he is one of the most revered and looked to still as a leader in his death in the world because of the sacrificial, devoted efforts of Coretta Scott King. And not because she was, you know, some wounded, you know, or hurt widow who lost her husband is looking for a cause to champion, because she was a woman who, before she met Martin Luther King Jr., was a peace advocate and activist herself, a woman who was very well versed on the issues of the world when she met her husband, a woman who was a part of a progressive political party when she was a college student on campus, a woman who stood up for her own self when they would not let her teach in the Yellow Springs school district in Ohio for you know, her, what do they call it when you, yeah, like the practice, student teaching, right. And so this is a woman who knew who she was, a woman who very early on knew about the importance of preserving and advancing this movement into the future, and therefore started holding on to and making sure that papers and recordings of Dr. King would still be here for future generations. You know, a woman who understood that the voice of Dr. King would be important to the peace movement. And when everybody else told him, don't touch it, don't speak out, you're going to alienate President Johnson from the work that we've been doing on the civil rights front, when every one of his civil rights buddies began to attack him profusely because he was speaking out against that, well, it was her who encouraged him to lend his voice to a movement that she had already been the spokesperson for the family in, the face in the family in, the one who was there before he even got there. It was her who was not just the wind beneath his wings, but many times was the wings themselves to help him fly. A woman who understood how to build the largest social change brand, if I can use that word, in the world. I visited the Nobel Museum a few years ago, and they told me that out of all of the Nobel laureates, not just Peace Prize laureates, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is the most searched on their website. Over 50%, and they have about 1 million visitors a day, are looking for something about Martin Luther King Jr. Because Coretta Scott King understood, starting out when he was assassinated, I got to take this message on a global world tour. So when she wrote her book, My Life with Martin Luther King Jr., she took the world tour first before she came back to the United States of America. A woman who was very intentional about building this legacy and institutionalizing things. She knew about the importance of building a King Center, an official living memorial, so that when there was a holiday, people would have a place, an epicenter to refer back to. So while they were trying to get the holiday passed all those years from 1968 when he was assassinated, she was building things up so that it would be a crescendo. So she had traveled to many cities and states across the country, you know, not necessarily about the holiday, but planting seeds and writing even governors and mayors to recognize the birthday even before it became a federal holiday. Many states started celebrating the birthday. So she was a very strategic woman. She built the largest repository of primary source materials related to the modern civil rights movement under my father's leadership at the King Center. We have an archive. A lot of people don't know about it, But there are many scholars and researchers that are well aware of it because they have to come through us to do some of their research, to get some of their books out and some of their papers and their dissertations, et cetera. And so this woman, it's so much I could say about what she did. She saved the birth home of Martin Luther King Jr. in Atlanta. The reason there is a birth home is because Coretta went to the mayor of Atlanta while my father was still living and said, please do not demolish that community. We need to save this birth home for future generations. And because she had that mindset and made sure that that home would be there and others would be preserved, that whole preservation effort led eventually to what now is the Martin Luther King Jr. National Historical Park. Because of her, it's the only Black park, national park in Georgia. And it's the only one where you have things that are directly associated with the person that are still original, the home, the church, the place where he worked from, SCLC is now part of that, and then his final resting place. There's so much I can say about her, but yeah, she's mine, my shiro. And as I close, please don't ever forget, although Daddy was at the forefront, although Abernathy and Wyatt T. Walker, and I'm thinking about those specifically that work with him in the SCLC. John Lewis didn't work with my father directly in the SCLC. He worked side by side as a part of SNCC. But those that were at the forefront when they first started before SCLC in Montgomery, Alabama, that did not happen because of those men and those pastors. It happened because of the Women's Political Council under Joanna Robinson. Mary Farrah Burke, who helped to found that with Joanna Robinson. They were already working, doing the groundwork that led up to the Montgomery protest. And when Mrs. Parks was arrested, several months after Claudette Colvin had been arrested, several months after other citizens of Montgomery had been mistreated on those buses and abused on those buses, in particular women. Several months after that, those women said, this is the moment. And they called for their boycott with E.D. Nixon. And E.D. Nixon reached out to my father to join forces. So the women really were the impetus. But women are very sensitive to time and situations, but they also know that they're not going to be disrespected. And so women knew that in order for this to be carried, they had to get at that time the leaders of the churches to be a part of it for it to be successful. So they had to work together side by side. My father understood that. He had a little sexism in him. He wasn't as bad as the rest of them, though. Yeah, my mama helped with that. She really helped with that. But they knew that we needed to be working side by side, but they were strategists. They were some of the drivers. I mean, everything you can think of. So if you want change in society, you need women connected. But let me finish. And I mean this with a loving heart. If you want to make sure that the whole society goes up, the most inclusive group of people that I know of is Black women. I just have to say that. When we show up, we're thinking about the whole. I don't know any other group, including white women, that do that. And that's not to be offensive, but just check your history and watch it. Got to have women.
Thank you.
Now I know many of you saying, what do you mean by love? Because people have so many different understandings of love. What I am talking about is not the powerless, the weak, and the anemic love. No, no, no. I'm talking about be love and implement the demands of justice. Be love and use your power to correct everything that stands against love. The urgency of now is to dig in and create a beloved community by rising up to be loved. Let's go forward in this moment and bridge the divides. Let's go forward to create a beloved community. Let's go forward and rise up to be loved.
Dr. King will be available in about 15, 20 minutes briefly for a little photo opportunity for those who wish to stick around. For those who do not wish to stick around, there's an opportunity to pick up a book outside where you registered earlier today. And at this time, it is my pleasure to welcome back to the stage, Javetta Steele, the incomparable Javetta Steele.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't know about you, but Dr. King stepped on my toes. If she stepped on yours, just say ouch. I know that's right. It was quite enlightening. I'm so grateful that she is here and in this space. I'd like to share with you a little piece. A little piece that I had the pleasure of writing with the great Don Cheadle and about 7 or 8 others here in Minnesota. The piece is called The Point of Review. And each one of us was supposed to bring to the table our point of view on a particular subject. I chose the Pentecostal Black Church. And this is a Southern woman talking to a young girl about the age of 17 who is struggling with who and whose she is. And the piece kind of solidifies what Dr. King was saying today, that if each one reaches one, we'll get something done. And so this woman decides to pass on this information to this 17-year-old girl who is struggling with her position in society and not sure if she's truly being loved. And it goes a little like this. Mother's board. Child, when did you become this beautiful? Why, with your father being so ill-faced and poorly built, who would ever think that you'd have the natural wherewithal to be as striking as any matriarch in this family? I look in your eyes and I see a collage of all the people that I've loved and known all my life. Now listen, you don't get to decide where you come from. Your say-so comes in where you're headed. You have a voice there. Oh, I can see that you tire of this family's consistencies, but you can't change our history any more than sunshine can sweeten trash. We are who we are, and we've been where we've been. Going to church when I was a girl was not an option. It was a way of life for us. My sisters and I would run the daily rituals of chores and pressed hair on Saturday, laying out our Sunday best that afternoon, all the while planning to attend some local church musical that evening. It wasn't an option of whether or not you were going to church. You were going and going on time. Sunday morning, Sunday school at 8 a.m., service at 11, YPWW, which stood for Young People's Willing Work, at 5, and then evening service about 7 o'clock thereafter. That's how it was. We sang songs of Zion while shouting and slobbering all over ourselves, calling on God late into the evening hours. We met our friends there. We met our lovers there. And we built a life there full of hallelujahs and amens that were as familiar as any family photo album. Preachers and politicians were synonymous. Whatever was going on in the community, whatever the need, great or small, all started and ended with the watchful and judging eye of the church. Oh, yes, there was plenty of judgment to go around. In my church, we had all sorts of sayings and rules that were intended to keep us in a right relationship with the Lord. Pastor would say, live your life as though it were the last days, using the Bible, Bible, which stood for basic instructions before leaving earth man. For reaching God here and in the great beyond. Or we sit there with divided interests, hoping that God didn't really care about our thoughts and deeds of want and lust only moments before entering his house, and would take some time to consider giving us a little credit for all the hours we had spent in church the week before. I don't think they trusted us nor themselves. I mean, really, church 4 and 5 times a week. You need a few days in between just to commit a valid sin or sure up a mighty testimony. Lord, it was so controlling. They even came up with an additional set of commandments just for the young folks, as if the original 10 were enough to swallow. We were called the Puritans, and you were permitted entrance at the tender age of 13, and along with your admittance came a commitment to charity and chastity and devotion to the church and your community at large. Right alongside your weekly Bible verses, you learned a few customaries. Now, let me see if I can remember them. 1, stop and think before you drink. 2, don't let your parents down. They brought you up. 3, be humble enough to obey. You'll be giving orders yourself someday. 4, at the first moment, turn away from all unclean thinking. 5, never offer criticism without also offering a better remedy. 6, choose a date that would make a good mate. Go to church faithfully. The Creator gives you a week, give him back at least an hour. 8, avoid following a crowd. Be an engine, not a caboose. 9, choose your friends carefully, for you are what they are. And 10, keep the original 10 commandments. Yes, that is food for thought. Now listen, baby, I know you have more questions than answers. And I also know that your thoughts are a montage of voices that are as confusing and colorful as a rainbow without rain. But I want you to know that you're not alone. We all understand. Some of us just have a tough time with the remembering. You're gonna be all right, more than all right. When things get difficult, I want you to do what Mama used to tell me to do. Stop, breathe, and push. Push, P-U-S-H, pray until something happens. And I know deep down in my Noah that everything will be all right. Well, we've come this far by faith. Lean on the Lord, trusting in His holy word. He's never failed. Yeah. I'm singing, oh, 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 oh. We've come this far by faith. Well, we've come this far. Trust in His holy word. Well, He's never failed me. I'm singing, oh, oh. And we're singing, oh, oh, oh. God bless you. Good night.
once again for Ms. Javetti Still. At this time, I know some of you are anxiously waiting to see who won the Shaka Khan Boys to Men raffle tickets. So at this point in time, I'd like to call to the stage Ms. Aisha Richardson.
Hello, everyone, again. Thank you all so much for coming tonight. The Minnesota Humanities Center, well, first, my name is Aisha Richardson. I have the pleasure of working with Kevin Lindsay, our CEO, Abby John, our COO, and I really want to take time to introduce you to our team. But first, I just want to say thank you all for coming today. And the Minnesota Humanities Center vision is to create a just society that is curious, connected, and compassionate. And when I look at all of you, most of which I've hugged, you're the epitome of that. So I just want to say thank you again, team. To my right, this Jessica Rust. She's done so much to make this amazing. And our Director of Development, who I hope connects with you soon. Please introduce yourself to her because she will be contacting you to make sure you're on our distribution list so you'll come to all of our activities and events. Next to her is Trig Thronkviet, our COO again, Abby John, and any other MHC staff members that are around, Mako Fredericks, Mary Prather, Casey DeMarais, Miss Rose McGee, Miss Sungja Shin, and the one next to her, she's not. Also, I want to really take time to say thank you to our board members who've come. I don't see them, but Nancy Noor, Pat and Patrick, Pat Welter and Patrick Henry, and lastly, totally not least, our wonderful producer, Monique Linder, and oh, I'm so sorry, board member Dr. David Hamler and his lovely wife, June, and our amazing sponsors. I can't go through and, really, I don't want to name them name by name, but it's just amazing how much they poured into this event and they trusted us. I mean, they trusted us to make it happen. And I hope that we came through the way you would like us to come through. Don't know much more to say other than I don't want to talk anymore. Jessica and Ann will lead the raffle, but let me tell you who you're going to see. He already did, but Boys to Men and Shaka Khan, thanks to Miss Monique Linder. And just thank you for coming. I'm so appreciative of you all, and I can't wait to see you at our MHC events.
All right, does everybody have their raffle tickets out? We are ready. Okay, the first ticket number is 8406938. Woo, we got a winner? Oh. I'm gonna read it one more time. 8406938. Okay, let's try another one. Let's see. We're gonna give it to Kevin and see if Kevin can pick a winner here. What do we got? All right, 8406885. Oh my goodness. That's our 8406885. We're almost there. 8406885. We're checking. I'll give everyone a moment to peruse their tickets. Okay, we're gonna try. I'm gonna pick it this time. We'll see if this is a winner. 8406875. Where? We got a winner. Woo! It's 8406875. And I'll read the other two numbers just in case some folks just walked in. 840-6885 and 840-6938. On. Okay, we have 3 more sets of tickets to award here, guys. So let's try this another time. Eight 6957. Sarah Cox. Woo, we got a winner. Okay, I'm gonna try these two one more time. 840-6875. And the last one here, 840-6938. All right, we've got 2 more sets. Okay, let's try. 840-6927. We've got a winner. Okay, last one. 840-6900. 840-6900. All right, let's do another one. You still might win. 840-6979. Congratulations, everyone.
And just a reminder for the book signing, you want to exit to your left through those doors.